June 30th, 2002. Yokohama International Stadium, Japan. The world is watching a ghost. For years of silence, surgical steel, and whispers that his career was over lead to this one moment. Oliver Kahn, the Titan, the Wall, the goalkeeper who had not conceded a single goal in the knockout rounds of this tournament, stands between Ronaldo and everything he has bled for. But Ronaldo doesn't see a goalkeeper standing in that goal. He sees the demons of 1998. He sees the hospital bed in Madrid. He sees the faces of the doctors who shook their heads and spoke carefully about the future. He breathes in and waits for the world to stop turning. 69,000 people are packed inside this stadium. Hundreds of millions more are watching from every continent, from every time zone, from living rooms and bars and street corners. But in this moment, in this narrow, burning corridor between Ronaldo Luis Nazário de Lima and the German goal, there is only the ball, and the man, and the 4 years of suffering that brought him here. The Brazilian carries the weight of a nation's grief into this arena. He carries the memory of Paris, the memory of the San Siro grass, the memory of the sound his knee made when it gave way the second time. Tonight, under the floodlights of Yokohama, with rain beginning to fall on the pitch and 69,000 hearts suspended in anticipation, all of that weight is about to either break him or become the most extraordinary comeback story in the history of the sport. 320 to 640, the trauma of Paris. To understand the triumph, we must first understand the trauma. Not just the football trauma, the human trauma. Because what happened to Ronaldo in the hours before the 1998 World Cup final at the Stade de France was not a tactical mistake or a crisis of confidence. It was something far more frightening, far more intimate, and for a long time, far more mysterious than the football world wanted to admit. Hours before Brazil faced France in the final, the 21-year-old Ronaldo suffered a convulsive episode on the floor of his hotel room in Paris. His roommate, Roberto Carlos, found him. An ambulance was called. And then, incomprehensibly, his name was removed from the team sheet, only to reappear 45 minutes before kickoff, scrawled in handwriting, as though someone had added it back in at the very last moment. What followed on that Parisian pitch was one of the most heartbreaking spectacles in the long and glorious history of Brazilian football. A hollowed-out, absent Ronaldo moved through the match like a man trying to remember not just his instructions but where he was and why. France won 3-0. Zinedine Zidane headed 2 of them. The best striker on earth had been invisible. And in the days and weeks that followed, the conspiracy theories erupted like a wound that would not close. Nike had pressured the Brazilian Federation. Food poisoning. Stress. A mystery that Brazil's Football Confederation refused to fully answer for years. The truth, a seizure, possibly triggered by stress, possibly neurological, still not fully settled in the medical literature, only emerged slowly. But by then, the damage was done. Ronaldo had carried that night in Paris with him like a stone in his chest. And then, 14 months later, the stone got heavier. 6:40 to 10 o'clock, the knee that shattered. November 21st, 1999. Inter Milan vs. Lecce at the San Siro. Ronaldo, fighting to reclaim the form that had made him the most feared forward on the planet, takes a run, plants his right foot, and something gives way. Not gives way. Ruptures. The patellar tendon in his right knee tears completely away from the bone. He goes down alone. No contact. No challenge. No opponent within 5 meters. The body, after years of extraordinary physical demands, simply said, no more. The surgeons operated immediately. The rehabilitation began. The schedule was punishing, the optimism cautious, the silence around him loud. And then, impossibly, 4 months later in April 2000, in his very first return match for Inter against Lazio, the knee failed again. The same knee. A different rupture. The kneecap itself fractured under the pressure of the reconstructed tendon, a catastrophic outcome that the surgical team had considered unlikely. Witnesses in that stadium said the sound was like a gunshot. Ronaldo did not scream. He simply lay on the pitch, looked up at the roof of the stadium, and was still. His expression, from the stands, went beyond pain. It was the expression of a man trying to accept a verdict that had just been delivered in a language he did not want to understand. The doctors were honest with him. They told him that full recovery was not guaranteed, that he might walk with a permanent limp, that the Ronaldo who had terrorized defenders at Barcelona and Inter in 1997 and 1998 might be gone. He was 23 years old, and Brazil had lost its smile. 10-13-20, the rebirth. Skepticism was his fuel. When Luiz Felipe Scolari named Ronaldo in Brazil's 2002 World Cup squad, the reaction across large parts of the football world sat somewhere between cautious sympathy and quiet, private doubt. He had played only a handful of competitive matches in 2 years. His movement looked different in the warm-up clips. His pace, that terrifying, supernatural burst of acceleration that had once made him genuinely untouchable, was not what it had been in 1997. Scolari listened to none of it. He had watched the training sessions in private. He had seen something in Ronaldo's eyes that he recognized from his own life as a player who had been written off early, a hunger that only the wrongly counted out can understand or summon. June 3, 2002. Ulsan Munsa Stadium, South Korea. Brazil's opening group match against Turkey. The world watched with its breath held as Ronaldo won a loose ball inside the area, extended his right leg, and rolled it into the net with a sliding volley. The limp was gone. The hesitation was gone. Something else had replaced them, a calm, cold certainty. In the next match against China, he scored again. Against Costa Rica in Suwon, a brace of goals, economic, precise, inevitable. In the round of 16 against Belgium, a sweeping left-footed finish that settled the tie. Piece by piece, match by match, goal by goal, the phenomenon was being rebuilt. Not the boy from Barcelona. Not even the same man from the San Siro. Something older and more dangerous, a striker who had looked into the abyss for 2 years and come back with the knowledge that nothing on a football pitch could ever frighten him again. 13-20-16-40, the road to the final. England stood in Brazil's quarter-final path at Shizuoka Stadium on a day when a pre-match thunderstorm had left the pitch gleaming and heavy. Ronaldo did not score, but he was everywhere, dragging defenders out of position, occupying 2 men at once, creating the geometry that allowed Ronaldinho's outrageous, looping free kick over David Seaman to send Brazil through. England went home. Brazil went forward. Then came Saitama and the semi-final against Turkey, the same Turkey Ronaldo had opened the tournament against, back when the questions were still loud and the doubts still reasonable. The game was tight, physical, played on a knife edge for 70 minutes. And then, in the way that only the truly great can do it, Ronaldo stepped forward. A diagonal pass from the left, perfectly weighted. The ball arrives at his right foot at the edge of the 6-yard box. Rushtu Rikber, one of the best goalkeepers in Europe that year, moves to close the angle. Ronaldo's foot extends, not with power, not with placement, just the simplest, most devastating toe poke in the history of a tournament. The ball goes under the goalkeeper's body. The Brazilian fans in the Saitama stands erupt and begin to spell his name in giant letters across the terraces. He had led Brazil to the World Cup final. The final act of the story had been set. Waiting in Yokohama was Oliver Kahn, the finest goalkeeper of his generation, a man who had not been beaten once in 4 knockout matches. And Ronaldo was going to face him. For years after Paris. 2 years after the San Siro grass. This was what all of it had been building toward.
1640 to 2000 hours, the goals that changed everything.
The 67th minute. Brazil press. Rivaldo receives the ball 30 yards from goal and drives a low, skidding shot at Oliver Kahn, the goalkeeper who has been immovable for 4 weeks. Kahn gets both gloves to it. And drops it. In that split second, in that single extraordinary moment of human fallibility from the most unbreakable goalkeeper in the world, time in Yokohama stops completely. Ronaldo pounces. He does not think. He does not hesitate. His body has been trained for 30 years for exactly this geometry: the loose ball, the open goal, the weight of everything pressing down on a single touch. He rolls it into the net. Low. Certain. Irresistible. It is not the most beautiful goal of his career. It is, without question, the most important. The Brazilian bench erupts as one body. Ronaldo sprints toward the corner flag with his arms stretched wide and his eyes squeezed shut, and every Brazilian watching from every part of the world knows precisely what they are seeing: not just a goal, but an answer. An answer to Paris. An answer to the San Siro. An answer to every person who ever said it was over. 12 minutes later, the arc is completed. Another pass, another perfect weight, another moment of pure predatory instinct from a man who has earned every atom of this. Ronaldo's second goal sweeps into the net. Germany broken. Brazil champions. The tears of Paris finally, completely, permanently washed away. The final whistle blows. Ronaldo sinks to his knees on the wet Yokohama grass. He does not immediately celebrate. He simply kneels there for a moment, alone, in the rain, and allows himself to feel everything he has carried for 4 years. And in that image, a man on his knees in the rain, finally free, the whole story becomes complete. 8 goals. The golden shoe. The World Cup trophy raised into the Yokohama night sky. Ronaldo didn't just win a tournament, he defeated medical science, shouldered the weight of a national trauma, and walked back out of the darkness when every reasonable voice said the door was closed forever. They told him he was finished. He told them, with the only language he knew, that he was only just beginning. Good night. And remember, the greatest comebacks are written not in the record books, but in the years when no one was watching.